Let us simplify another streetscapes today. We will be using a photograph as a reference. The photograph is little bit complicated and we will be picking up certain area elements from certain area of the reference photograph and we will be diffusing rest everything. So this is the photograph reference and we will be picking up the area around the auto rickshaw in yellow and green and we will be adding a couple of figures and that will be the focus, right? I am using a cold pressed watercolor paper around 300 GSM and I am using a waterproof pen for the drawing. So the focus is on the auto rickshaw, the yellow and green colored vehicle, and I am making that drawing first and I will be adding the other elements around the auto rickshaw. And this is a very kind of a suggestive drawing, very rough drawing. And around this we will add other elements, okay, and rest every element will be very kind of impressionistic and not with many details. Some basic shapes around this area and please focus on the size and shape and the angles of this particular area where I am drawing now, the auto rickshaw, and this particular area I am little bit focusing on the shapes. And there are a lot of things inside and I will not be drawing a lot of these things in detail and I will not be painting it with the details. Okay, so around this area I am little particular and maybe the rest of the things we will be just giving very kind of a suggestions. Maybe a guy here. And whenever you are adding figures, you have to pay attention to the overall size. And these tiny figures are slightly at a height. Okay, that is why their heads are little above. And the perspective is just normal perspective. I mean, it's a flat land and the viewer, I have clicked this photo, by walking on the road. So the perspective is very normal kind of a perspective. And couple of figures, one guy riding a scooter and another guy walking, and this area is just a kind of a placeholder. I mean, I will not be adding too much of details here except maybe this electric pole I may suggest, but the other area, the buildings and other things on the right side, I will be just giving a suggestion. I'm drawing a little fast, so the pen drawing may not be seen as very clear because see, when you draw fast on a textured paper, you will find that the lines are not very smooth. Okay, there will be a lot of white gaps and textures on the drawing. That is quite natural because the cold pressed paper has a texture and I'm drawing it fast. And there is a scooter here. There are actually one bike and one scooter. So I will be just suggestively drawing this scooter. Okay, very roughly I will be drawing this, and I'm planning that to be in a silhouette. Okay, not with a lot of details. I think this much is sufficient for the drawing, and let us now start on the coloring part of it. Okay, so let us wet the paper. I'm wetting the paper throughout, except for the auto rickshaw probably and maybe a couple of figures. Okay, rest every area I'll be wetting it so that those things we can do it very quickly as a wet on wet wash. Right. Right, taking a little bit of cerulean blue on the wet paper and I am applying the sky. See, when I said wetting the paper, the left side building area, I have left it dry. I didn't wet the auto rickshaw and the left side building. Okay. And now adding little bit of a ground by burnt sienna. So the colors used so far are cerulean blue and burnt sienna. Now I am adding a little bit of ultramarine blue and a touch of crimson, and suggesting the lower portion of the ground, the road basically, and using same color to suggest some of the darker areas. Okay, see, this area I want to have little bit of an attention, so I want it should have dark color, but it should also show some other colors like red, some greens and other things. So I am suggesting some darker tone but with some color variations within. I think that will make it little bit more interesting. It is just a try. Okay, so we have to experiment whenever we do these kind of loose works. We have to experiment. A little bit of a purple tone for the right side building, and let us maybe make the entire right side building as kind of a slightly darker, maybe purplish kind of a big shape. That's it, because I don't want this to be having any details. It is just a placeholder, and that is what my plan is right now. I might change it going forward, I'm not sure. I'm keeping that freedom. Okay, this could be some farther end buildings, and I'm sure that it is pretty light and it will dry even lighter, so it may not be very much visible once it is dry, but let us see how it happens, how it comes out at the end. Now let us work on the building. It is mainly done with Naples yellow and maybe a touch of burnt sienna, little bit of a color variation, and I am using slightly smaller brush. For the big washes I have used a mop brush, synthetic mop brush, and now I am using a slightly smaller brush. Again, it is a synthetic mop brush but smaller size. Some color variation, adding more of burnt sienna and maybe some darker tones. Now adding a little bit of Payne's grey to the previous mix so that it has some color tone variation. Now it is almost dry, not fully dry, and at this point I have sparkled some water droplets so that it creates some texture. Okay, now let us go for this auto rickshaw, which is Naples yellow and little bit of orange, kind of orangish yellow. I'm sure that it will dry lighter, so it should be okay at the time when it dries. Okay, now some cobalt green kind of a color. So in the reference you may not find that color, so I have just made that color. I have changed that color from the reference to the painting. In the reference it is kind of a very light color, and here I am using red color. Although this area is fully under shadow, I will be adding dark colors later, but I thought an underlying red color may give some hues, some hints of red once, even after adding the darker shadow colors. Some mix of this green color, red color, etc. So that it may suggest later of some lights passing through those green and red elements. So the shadow area may not be very black. It may have the tints of the hues of this one, green and red. Okay, now this is kind of a lavender color for the figure, and the next figure with blue. Okay, and let us suggest some more figure. Very kind of creating some illusion. Okay, not these are not very precise. And some of these figures who are in that particular shop, so they are slightly at a height, they are on a platform, so I have made the head slightly above the figures those who are on the ground. Okay, in the reference I don't see much figure there, so I am adding a couple of figures to add interest. So there should be some kind of story, And what story depends upon the viewer. The viewer can interpret this. And now let us make the tree. I am using some kind of green. I do not know precisely which green it was, but it was something like a sap green and added with burnt sienna, and making some touches for the edge leaves and then larger volumes of the foliage using the side of the brush. It is very quick brushworks, without thinking too much. We are thinking of, maybe I am thinking of the overall shape of the foliage, that's it. You don't have to compare it with the reference. Right, don't make it very flat. Add some color variation and tone variations. Now I am adding a little bit of sap green and a touch of white to make it little opaque green color, and it is with a slightly thicker consistency. So I think I will change the brush to a different brush, smaller brush, because I was not getting good control. And yeah, some slightly darker tones, and I think we are pretty much filled that area with yellow and green, and we will need darker tones now. That we will do shortly. And let us suggest some darker tones for the figures and the scooter, etc. Those tiny things. Again, these are just suggestions, not precise. And I always tend to smudge with my finger. Wherever I don't need too much of a precision, I just smudge it with my finger, so that I don't have to precisely define the things. Okay, this scooter is little too tiny, and the size of the paper that I am using is slightly smaller than A4. It is 1/8 of a sheet. Okay, I think those two figures are okay, and let us make the shadow for the auto, the under portion of the auto, and let us make this shadow. Okay, right. Now these shadows are adding a lot of light into the painting, and this is, I'm very vaguely treating this scooter. Okay, this is not done with any precision, just suggestions. Okay, and I know that this is not a very good way of doing it, but I think overall at the end it will work, because I don't want this to grab too much of attention in the final painting. That is the reason I am not adding too much of vibrant colors here. It is kind of in the shadow. Okay, and I am not sure whether we should add shadows for this scooter, because I am planning it to be under some shadow. But let us create a shadow for the time being, and maybe we can glaze another shadow on top of it. Okay, now I am just making the shadow. Overall, it is not a perfect shadow or perfect scooter, but I think it makes sense. And I think little bit of a texture, opaque color, that means little bit of blue, white or lavender sort of a color. I'm making some touches here and there to create some kind of a texture, because I don't want that to be looking very flat. I think this much is sufficient for this. I don't have to worry too much about this. And we have to decide what next. Okay, what is to be done next? You can also think along with me. Let us add the dark. See, all those reds and greens that we have initially applied, those things are kind of getting lost. But watercolor being little transparent, I am expecting that some of the underlying washes may be seen through. So that may create some interest. Okay. See, these are under shadows. Those figures are under shadows and they won't strongly pop up. Okay, they won't be strongly visible and we cannot have too much of contrast for those figures. Some kind of little bit opaque kind of a touch here and there, so that it will suggest some details under the shadow. And they are not very precise, as I told. Some kind of touches for the auto. Right. I think overall it looks convincing as of now. We will have to add a lot of details. Of course, some of these orange touches for the exposed body part, the skin tones and the tail lamps. That is what we are doing now. And here again, not with a lot of precision, just some suggestions, so that those subtle figures will look a little bit more convincing. Right. I don't want to do too much of orange now. Maybe what we need to do is some shadows on the building, some plain changes, and I'm using a big mop brush and I'm doing it very quickly, and I'm not really worried about the edges. The edges are not perfect. Okay, and let us add some more darker. This looks very light. I don't think we can have such a lighter tone for the right side buildings. So I'm making it a little bit more darker. See, the problem now, what I feel is that it appears that this area is under shadow because of this strong purple color, and that means that the shadows of the auto and the figures that we have painted doesn't look properly fitting with the rest of the shadows. So I'm kind of merging these shadows. Okay, the shadow of the autos and figures, everything I'm sort of merging, and let us have some strong shadows at the bottom also, so that all the shadows are kind of consistent. This looks too dark. I'm adding a little bit of orange color to that, so that it looks there is some kind of a warmth in the shadow also. So yeah, I think this is okay. Now it looks very dark. I think once it will dry, it will look lighter. Some splattering of water to create some texture, and I think we are pretty much done with the big shapes. Okay, I'm pretty much happy. I know that the farthest building, the background building, is now looking very light, but I will ignore that. If you want, you can paint the farthest building as well with a lighter tone, but I will be ignoring that. Some sort of windows for the light hitting areas. So I'm using burnt sienna color for this, and I'm using a small liner brush sort of thing, and it is a dry brushwork. Okay. Right, I think that building looks convincing. Some suggestion for 1 or 2 windows on the side plane also. So we can do a lot of things for the building, but I don't want to do that because we are simplifying it. Some darker things on the ground floor of the right side building. And I think that's it. I will not add too much of details on the right side building. I will not give any details. That is what I'm thinking of now. And maybe dry brushwork for the electric pole. And maybe we'll add a couple of cables moving around. So I'm using a liner brush. It is actually a Chinese calligraphy brush, but kind of a liner brush. Okay, a small size Chinese calligraphy brush. Now this is an actual liner brush, rigger brush, and I am making some cables. I feel that these cables went little thicker, but I am ignoring that. I am in a hurry, so oh, this went really thick. I should have taken little bit more care for the cables. It is becoming little thicker. Anyway, we can't do anything to fix it now, fix the cable. Now these are some thick white outline or the highlights basically for those figures, so that they kind of they will grab more attention. That white above the tail lamp was a wrong touch. I shouldn't have done that. And some of the shoulder. And I think this much is sufficient for this. If you are not happy using white in watercolor, you can ignore this step. Okay. Right. Don't overdo this. I think I am already overdoing, but stay away from your urge to overdo with these highlights. Okay. It can spoil the work actually. Little bit of highlight using some red color, because the shield, the kind of the sheet above is little reddish in color, so the reflection, the highlights may have some presence of red. Okay, I think that much is sufficient. I am not worried about what is happening under those figures. Okay. These, I think we are in a stage that we can treat it as done, and I am signing it now. Okay, and let us now take out the tape, and now this is the finished work. Okay, I think we have to add some kind of minor touches. That white is little bit troubling me, so I am removing that white, and maybe a kind of a directional line showing the depth of the road. I think this much is good enough, and we can treat this as done. So thank you very much for watching this video, and I hope this video was informative and you are finding some value in it. And if you are finding some value, please do subscribe and press the bell notification. And if you have any questions, comments, suggestions, please write them into the comment box below. And if you think this can help your friends, please share this video to your artist friends, artist group, so that it can reach to more audience. More people can take benefit out of this video. So thank you very much once more, and we will soon see you with another interesting tutorial, and happy painting until then. Bye bye.